who are suffering from an illness of the mind. Sometimes society looks upon people as crazy. It may only mean that they're alienated from their own true natures. A toast to the beginning of a fruitful partnership.
Let me introduce you to Dr. Laszlo Chrysler.
I've read your work. I found it fascinating.
What I like most about the Alienist is that there is a woman, is a female character in the line investigation. Do you think this could be like a change, a new dynamic in this type of series, in this killer thriller show set in another century?
I mean, I loved getting to play this character because she is at the center of the story just as much as her male counterparts. And you know, when you describe Sarah, you describe her, she's the first female to work for the police department, and I just love getting to explore her story in the workplace and how through the series you see her kind of come into her own and be smarter than most of the guys that are in the room, and so I love getting to show a strong female character in any time, but also in 1896 when there were so many things that women couldn't do and so many boundaries that people had put on a woman and what their place was in society, and it was so kind of difficult for a woman to do something different, and so we really get to see a very feminist character in Sarah in a time that was not very feminist, and so I loved getting to play her, and I've loved getting to see people's reactions to her and how they seem to also love seeing this this strong of a female character set in such a set such a long time ago.
How do you think the Alienist connects with our world now?
How does it connect with our world? Well, it's a story. It's a fictional crime thriller, and people are very fascinated with them. It does mirror a lot of society's issues that we have today. You know, we still have these huge class divides, the very poor to the very rich, and the ones who suffer and the ones who gain from these situations. So, I mean, not much has changed, and then we've come a long way, and yet we haven't come very far at all. It's quite interesting to see something that's 120 years in the past, and somehow it still resonates with an audience, and it's quite topical, and it will hopefully start lots of conversations.
Dr. Chrysler have a line in The Alienist that says there's something evil in all of us. Do you think your character have a dark part? How you describe it?
Well, I think all the characters in The Alienist have a past, of something that they want to hide or something that they've not really addressed, and they've sort of lived with it. And I think that's quite a human thing. We all have things that we want to just shove in a box and not think about. And these characters are forced to address those issues. They all have their own issues. They're all a little damaged in a way. And so I think it's a very human trait to have a dark side. I don't think that dark doesn't necessarily mean evil, but I think we all have our skeletons in the closet, as it were.
We see in The Alienist, you said Sarah is the first woman who worked with the police department, and also we see how the fingerprints start to be important in cases of murders, for example. What did you find more interesting of this time?
Well, that was something when I first read the scripts when I was introduced to the project. One thing that really jumped out at me was, you know, this story is also about, it's a time of new discoveries, you know, it's the birth of psychology, the birth of forensics, the fingerprints, and all of that was just not regarded as real in those days. And so we get to see my character, Sarah, has a line specific to the fingerprints of, she says, "Oh, isn't it believed that someone is born with a fingerprint and they never change?" You know, and it kind of hit me as somebody living today who takes that knowledge for granted, that of course it had to be discovered at some point and that we haven't always known. And so I was very fascinated by that element of the story as well, of just seeing how these things were discovered and how they were used and how difficult it was to get other people to expand their minds and to realize that there was so much that wasn't known and that had to be discovered. And you also see how people hate that. They hate change and kind of are happy to continue going and they don't want anything disrupted. And that's what my character and Dr. Chrysler and Luke's character John and that's what we're doing. You know, we're confronting people with what needs to change and what's kind of wrong with the society that we're living in.
Well, that's a really interesting point, that the Alienist, it's based in the 1890s New York City, and it was the beginning of psychology. It was also the beginning of forensic science, and so, like you said, the fingerprints were still a very early idea that was still being experimented with, and we discover these and we use these new tools within the story of the Alienist and within our criminal investigation. So I thought that was quite fascinating to see the beginnings of what now is basically used in every criminal investigation, these forensic pathology and forensic science of finding DNA. Now we're able to do that with blood samples, tiny little blood samples or saliva. It's extraordinary what you can do. But this is like the beginnings of all of that, and I thought that was quite a factual and very interesting part of forensic history.
Did you research about the fact who was the real woman who worked with the police department, or how the fingerprints were studied?
You know, I know that there is a woman who was the first female to work for the police department, obviously. Sarah is a fictional character, so I wanted to kind of dive into her world and not try and make her into the real woman, because it's not who she is. But no, I kind of just, when I'm making something, I don't do a lot of research beforehand. I really like to go with what's in the script, and what's ultimately in the script is what the writers and producers and directors want to convey to the audience. And so I kind of work within the confines of that usually. So I didn't do a lot of outside research. I usually just stick with the story we're trying to tell.
There's a very interesting novel which is extremely in-depth and historically quite accurate, that we have lots of characters that are portrayed in the show that are real people from that time. I didn't do any more research on forensic pathology. I did more that related to my character. I learned how to draw. I had an artist that helped me sketch the drawings properly, and that was quite an enjoyable part of my character.
I would like to ask you about the Cannes Film Festival ban on films from Netflix and other streaming services which no longer be eligible for the Palme d'Or. What do you think about this?
I didn't even know about that. I've been too busy making movies. I don't know. I think it's a shame, because we put as much love and attention into this TV show as we would have into any movie, and movies on Netflix as well are probably as in depth as anything outside of Netflix. I mean, we're making stories. We're putting compelling stories on the screen. So who knows? But I didn't really know much about that. So.
Well, I am obviously a very big fan of Netflix, and I see so many things on Netflix that are either limited series like The Alienist, or films that I do think are wonderful and exciting. And I think ultimately, again, people are adverse to change sometimes, and things take time, and so I'm certainly a fan of films on Netflix, and I do think that there is such a strong argument for that being the way of the future. And you know, I think sometimes things take time to catch up to the rapid changes in our world. So I don't know. It's complicated, I guess.
I find the bones to be the most reliable witness, while my brother's more a man of the flesh.
He means the soft tissues.
What if it's true? One man committed both murders.
You run along home now, society, why?
Our task is to construct an image of the man, his habits, his appetites, and thereby capture him.
Gentlemen, you have made yourself a wide variety of very powerful enemies.